This is Sally, the proud owner of Sally's Pottery, a small online shop featuring her hand-thrown ceramics. She's just added a brand new feature she's excited about, a product review section. Now, customers can leave ratings and share their thoughts about the pieces they've purchased. Sally added this feature because reviews build trust. Hearing real experiences from real buyers helps new visitors see the value and quality of her work. Right now, the review section is empty. Sally just launched it this morning. But by lunchtime, her first review comes in. Take Jennifer. She's a new customer who just received her order. She logs into Sally's site and leaves a glowing review. Beautiful piece. The glaze is gorgeous in person. A few hours later, Charles shows up. He's a regular. This is his third order from Sally. He adds his own review. My third order from Sally. Never disappointed. Sally is delighted. Her review system is working exactly the way she imagined. Real customers, real feedback, real social proof for the next visitor deciding whether to buy. It's also a brand new attack surface. Sally just opened a text box on every product page, and whatever anyone types into it gets saved and displayed to everyone else. This opens the door to attacks like XSS. And this is where Kim comes in. He is an ethical hacker and penetration tester. Today, Kim is going to look at that new review section, and what he finds is going to change how Sally thinks about every input form she's ever built. Let's dive in. But before we see how Kim does it, you may ask, what exactly is an XSS attack? XSS stands for cross-site scripting. The name is historically confusing. What it really means is code injection into a web page. The goal is to trick a website into delivering malicious code to other users' browsers. Here's the basic idea. Modern websites are interactive. They take input from users, for example, reviews, comments, profile bios, search queries, store it in a database, and then display it back on the page. Usually that's fine. The user types "great product," the website stores it, and shows it to other visitors. But what if the user doesn't type "great product"? What if they type HTML or JavaScript code? If the website doesn't carefully sanitize the input before displaying it, the browser can't tell the difference between the website's intended content and the attacker's injected content. It just runs everything it's given. That's XSS. In other words, a visitor's browser interprets the attacker's input as part of the page itself and executes it. You might draw a parallel with SQL injection. Both SQL injection and XSS are injection attacks where the attacker supplies input that gets treated as code. The difference? SQL injection targets the server's database, while XSS targets the user's browser, the client. This is why XSS is often considered a client-side attack, while SQL injection is primarily a server-side attack. Now let's watch over Kim's shoulder as he performs the XSS attack. Kim is looking for vulnerabilities in the input handling, and the review form is the obvious place to start. It's a brand new public input that Sally added without much hardening. Kim notices that Sally has put a first barrier in place. You have to be signed in to leave a review. That stops random bots and casual abuse. Anyone who wants to post a review has to go through the trouble of creating an account first. But for Kim, that's not a problem. He created a new account and can now sign in with his login data. Now he's just another logged-in customer on Sally's site, no different from Jennifer or Charles. He goes to the review form on the product page, but instead of typing a review, he types something very different. Let's break this down. The script tags tell the browser, everything between these is JavaScript code, run it. Kim is trying to smuggle code past Sally's site and have it executed by visitors' browsers. The next part is Kim's own server running on his laptop. The hostname Kim resolves to his machine's IP. Port 9000 is where his listener is running. The C parameter is where the stolen data will be appended. The steal part is just a URL endpoint Kim chose for his listener. Document.cookie is JavaScript's way of reading the cookies the website has set in the visitor's browser, including the session cookie that proves they're logged in. The function encode URI component makes the cookie safe to put in a URL. Finally, this part is what actually does the work. It creates a new image element in memory and sets its source URL. When you set the source element of an image, the browser immediately fires off an HTTP request to that URL to fetch the image data. But Kim isn't really requesting an image, he's hiding data inside the URL itself. Look at the URL he's building. The C at the end is a query parameter, like the search in a Google search URL. Whatever comes after the equal sign is sent to the server, and what Kim is putting there is the visitor session cookie. So, when a visitor browser tries to load this image, it's actually sending its cookie to Kim's server, embedded in the URL of a request that looks like a perfectly normal image fetch. Why does Kim use an image request and not a more obvious method like fetch? Well, because images don't trigger security warnings. Browsers happily load images from anywhere on the internet. It's the cleanest way to leak data out of a page silently. Put it all together, this payload tells the visitor's browser to silently send their session cookie to Kim's server, disguised as an image request. But that payload only works if Kim's server actually exists to receive the requests. So, before he submits the review, Kim needs to set up a listener on his server. He has prepared a listener script called KimServer on his own machine. This is a tiny program, about 20 lines, that runs on port 9000 and waits. Every time a request hits steal, the endpoint of Kim's listener, the listener script grabs whatever cookie value came in the URL, writes it to a log file, and returns a 1x1 transparent image so the victim's browser doesn't show a broken image icon. The log file Kim writes the cookies into is called loot.log. He calls it loot because that's the classic cybersecurity nickname for stolen data: credentials, cookies, tokens, anything you manage to extract from a target system. The file would be created automatically by the listener script the first time a cookie gets captured. But Kim creates it beforehand and opens it in a terminal with ~F, so he can watch new cookies arrive in real time, line by line, as victims trigger the payload. The terminal sits empty for now. No cookies have arrived yet. Kim hasn't actually posted the payload. The trap isn't set. Well, it's time to set it. Kim sets the rating to 5 stars so his review doesn't look suspicious. Then clicks submit. Nothing visible happens. No pop-up, no error message. The page just reloaded normally. Kim's review is in the list, but the review body looks empty. There's nothing to read. But the malicious script is in there. Sally's site stored exactly what Kim typed, and it's now sitting in her database, attached to her product, waiting for the next visitor to load the page. Kim can now logs out, walks away from Sally's site, and waits for the first session cookie to appear in his terminal. The trap is set. A few hours later, Linda shows up. She's an existing customer with previous orders from Sally. She even has a few pieces from this collection already. She wants to look at a new piece she's been thinking about. So she goes to the sign-in page. From here on, we're watching both sides of the attack at the same time. Linda is on the left, doing exactly what she's done a dozen times before. Kim's terminal is on the right, silently waiting. Linda types her username and password, then clicks sign in, and boom. That single line is Linda's session cookie, the identifier Sally's site uses to know that this browser is Linda. It just traveled from Linda's computer to Kim's listener, through the malicious review Kim planted hours earlier. Linda has no idea anything happened. On her side, the page loaded normally. The header now says, "Hi Linda." She's logged in. She moves on to browse the products like nothing is wrong, because from her perspective, nothing is. Kim now has everything he needs to impersonate Linda. He opens his own browser and goes to Sally's site. He's logged out, just a no one special visitor, the same way Linda was before she signed in. He right-clicks anywhere on the page and selects Inspect to open the browser's developer tools, a set of tools that lets him see and modify the page's code and network activity. In the Storage tab, he expands cookies and clicks on Sally's site. He sees his own session cookie sitting there, the one his browser got when he last visited Sally's site. He copies the cookie value from his terminal. That single string is the only thing Sally's site, and most sites like it, is checking to confirm someone is Linda. Kim pastes Linda's stolen cookie over the top of his own, replacing his session ID with hers. Then presses enter. Now he refreshes the page. And there it is. The site greets him as Linda. Kim didn't enter Linda's password. He didn't break the login form. He didn't crack any encryption. He just stole the cookie that proves someone is Linda, and now Sally's site believes he is her. He clicks My Orders. And there it is. 3 past purchases, $100 of pottery, shipping dates, item names, totals. Kim is looking at Linda's private order history in her account from her active session. From here, depending on what Sally's site exposes, Kim could change Linda's shipping address, place new orders billed to her saved payment method, or modify her account email. Anything Linda herself could do from a logged-in session. All of it from one line of code, hidden in a review nobody thought to validate. That's stored XSS. So here is how to defend against it. Escape every piece of user input before displaying it. This is the fundamental fix. Whenever a website displays content that came from a user, dangerous characters like less than, greater than, double quote, and single quote should be converted to harmless HTML entities. Then the browser shows them as text instead of executing them. In PHP, that's one function, HTML special chars. Other languages have equivalence function. Modern frameworks like React or Angular escape by default, making XSS harder to write than to avoid. Validate input on the way in, escape it on the way out. These are two different jobs. Validation rejects input that doesn't make sense. A review field shouldn't accept HTML tags. Escaping handles whatever input did make it through, treating it as data when it gets displayed. Validation alone isn't enough. Attackers are clever about bypassing filters, and escaping alone leaves edge cases. Layer them both. Finally, set the HTTP only flag on session cookies. This one is specifically about the attack we just saw. The HTTP only flag tells the browser that JavaScript is not allowed to read the session cookies. Only the server can access them. With HTTP only set, Kim's document cookie call would return an empty string for the session cookie. That's it for today. Thanks for watching. If you found this helpful, hit the like button, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next episode. See you there. Bye-bye.